This is the story of an adolescent named Gleb. Gleb James was a 15-year-old high school student. Since the 5th grade, he had gotten a massive amount of friends, which led him to distance himself from his own family. The relationship between his friends had become so close and severe that Gleb succumbed to treating his family almost like strangers or people with no importance in his life. Schoolwork wasn't helping either. Despite his connections with so many friends, he was a hard-working student and cared as much about his grades as he did about his friends. He would often yell at his family, telling them to stay away from him or to stop talking to him. He was basically verbally abusing his family to stress from school and his friends. He was blindly living such a horrible life, but it would all change in an event that would forever change his life. Just like any Friday afternoon, school had just ended and Gleb was on his way out of school, surrounded by a big cloud of his friends. Because he didn't like taking buses, he was to be picked up by his parents every day. After saying his goodbyes with his friends, Gleb proceeded to walk around in the school parking lot to wait for a familiar car. It would normally take around 5 minutes for his friend's car to pick him up, but it had been over 10 minutes and Gleb was frustrated. He took out his phone to call his mom, and after pushing call, all he heard was complete silence. Not even beeping on the other end, just silence. In an attempt to not jump to conclusions, Gleb called a taxi. It didn't take long for him to doze off in the car. After a couple minutes, he was woken up by the driver explaining that he had reached their destination. Trying to remain awake, Gleb quickly paid the driver and got out of the car. After doing some stretches and yawning, Gleb finally decided to look around. This strange neighborhood was nowhere near his house. Confused, Gleb let out his anger and violently kicked the nearby crate multiple times. The crate having kicked so far that it had actually revealed what it was hiding under it. A large metal trapdoor with a rusty handle. For some strange reason, Gleb couldn't tell himself to ignore it. Instead, he opened the trapdoor and went down a long ladder. Gleb had no idea what he was expecting. Little did he know that what was underground in this mysterious space would slap him into reality. Upon walking down a dimly lit hallway, Gleb finally saw a spark of light. It got bigger as he progressed forward, and finally, he had gotten to the light. A big staircase leading to the surface, and as soon as he got to the top, it was his house. His own house. The house he lived in and slept in every day. A part of him told him that he had taken a shortcut, but something about his house told him something different. He started asking himself so many different questions. Why was there this underground tunnel leading to my house? Why did I never notice this huge tunnel? Why did the taxi driver take me here? But finally, why does my house look so old and abandoned? Gleb didn't want to believe what he was thinking. Could his family possibly have abandoned him? Could they have just disappeared in a blink of an eye, without any final moments? Gleb didn't want to think about it. He simply sprinted over to the front door of his house and kicked it open with rage and desperation. He called out for everyone. He yelled countless times, "Mom! Dad! Sarah! Jake! Rocky!" There were no responses at all. Gleb was terrified. He didn't want to believe anything. He once again sprinted and dashed down the underground tunnel. Surprisingly, Gleb ended up somewhere else. Not the big ladders he had used to come down, but he ended up in a pitch-black room. He tried to extend his arms to try to grab something. For a couple seconds, everything Gleb could hear was his heavy breathing and thoughts. Thinking his room was just a dead end, Gleb started to turn around, but he was flashed by the blinding lights of thousands, millions of small screens in the distance. Trying to see the screens, Gleb moved in closer, and as he walked in, the white panels suddenly all changed to writing. 2014, 10/11. Still alive, no family contact. 2014, 10/13. Still alive, no family contact. 2036, 5/20. Still alive, restraining order towards family. 2087, 6/20. Dead, won't think about family. It didn't take long for Gleb to realize what these panels were telling him. It was a rough summary and an accurate prediction of what his life would be like, which only included facts about his life and family. Feeling a bigger wave of disbelief and confusion, Gleb proceeded to walk in a lot further. The screens once again changed and they displayed 4 words. "You see this, Gleb?" Gleb didn't question how the panels were displaying his name. He simply kept on walking further. "It's time you stop living this nightmare you call life. All you need to do is press a button and it'll all be over. All you need is an update. Gleb continued walking. He finally came to an electronic panel, and displayed on the screen were two buttons: update and ignore. Gleb stood in front of the panel for what felt like hours. He never had so many thoughts in his head before. And he felt it. He had realized exactly what he was put into this. He realized he was living his life without the source for all happiness: family. Gleb started to reflect on his whole life. Tears started rolling down his cheeks, and he collapsed on the floor. Disappointment and embarrassment filled his mind. He called himself stupid, a fool, a numbskull. He couldn't live with himself. Gleb managed to get up and smash on the update button. He then fainted on the ground. Gleb woke up in his room. He got up and looked around his room like it was the one of a stranger. Gleb's mother suddenly came into the room. "I've got your dinner here," she said. Gleb stared at his mother for a while. "I'll just leave it here," she said, and proceeded to leave the room. Gleb ran over to his mom and hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I hope you can forgive me." He just apologized over and over, trying to hold back tears. Slightly confused, his mother had smiled and just hugged him back. It had been a week after the incident, and Gleb's life had changed into pure happiness. He had lost a couple friends to spend time with family, but he was happy. At one moment, he looked down at the ground and wondered how the mysterious underground base had even existed. He even went looking for it but found no trace of it. He was wondering so many things about that place, but he reflected on them and often forgot about them. Because for the first time in his life, Gleb James was smiling on the outside and inside. Gleb James was happy.